All right, Ridge Runners, we're here for another trail talk. We're going to sit down here with Michael and Wes, and we're going to talk about the Shawnee 50, and we're going to talk about it from the perspective of both the race director and a participant. So hopefully you enjoy the show today, and we're going to jump right in. Let's start with what leads up to a race of this magnitude and what it takes to host.
Yeah, so I talked about this with a lot of people, leading up to this, about just like how this journey, this concept was 8 years in the works. The whole idea of the Shawnee 50, or several years ago, it was just a 50-mile race at the Shawnee Forest. It started 8 years ago when I first sort of like was getting into race directing, and even before that, when I first visited the Shawnee Forest, I immediately fell in love with it. So I went to school at Shawnee State University, started in 2007, and I was brought out there with the team, coaches, and that was my first trail running experience ever. And so I immediately was captivated by just the magnitude of the Shawnee Forest. And then later, throughout my 4 years at Shawnee, I started discovering the forest, and every run was just like this new discovery. Trail running became a very important part of my running life, not just from like racing or whatnot, but just from like a mental clarification. It was just like Wednesdays, the day we went out to the trails, was like our escape from college or the city, our day to get out on the trails. And not everyone from the team took to the trails. There was a core group of us that went out there weekly. By the time I was a junior or senior, I was going out there 3, 4, 5 times a week. And as I was increasing my trail time, I was getting faster too. So it was like all these just positive emotions, result of the Shawnee Forest. And then as I started figuring out that there were these long trail races, is when I started thinking like, there's no trail race at the Shawnee Forest. And really that kind of was crazy to me, that there was no race of distance out there, even a short distance out there. And that's kind of when the first idea was sparked. And this was probably 2009, 2010, when, even well before I was graduated from college, well before I was a race director, this idea, at least at some very small level, was sparked in my head, where I was like, wow, there needs to be a race out here. And then there was, in 2010, early summer, two friends and I ran the 40-mile backpack trail at the Shawnee Forest for my friend's bachelor party. That's what he wanted to do.
Not the choice of most people, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just like the 40-mile backpack trail is a very central part of the forest. And I forget how it kind of developed, but we were like, let's just do the whole thing one day. And it was like all of our longest run. I never ran an ultra marathon at this point. I was still competing in college. We had it was right after the season, so we had the time and the freedom to do that. But that experience was really monumental in my life as well. Just like first time running 40 miles for one, but also like doing the entire forest basically in one loop. And then in 2011, the year I graduated from college, I actually put in permits to host a 50-mile race at the Shawnee Forest. I talked to the forest managers, the park managers, and this 22-year-old kid right out of college just had this grandiose idea of like putting on a race, just because I was super passionate about it. Before I even was able to open up registration, I came to the realization, it's like, I'm not skilled at race directing at this point. I don't have the connections with, just the general community of runners to have the volunteers, the participants. And that really just kind of set in motion, to be honest, kind of where I'm at today with race directing. I went to grad school for recreation management with a focus in event management, all the while just having this idea in my head that I wanted to put on a 50-mile race at the Shawnee Forest, purely out of the beginning of just like being passionate about this place. And then also later being passionate about showcasing this place to other people, because it still is, it's going to be a little bit more now that the race happened, but it's still just such an unknown mecca gem of trails and terrain, just such a rugged place. And so in 2014, I started SEOTR with this goal of hosting races through this nonprofit. And we started off with the Iron Furnace Trail Run, which is a half marathon. It's going on year 6 now. Then the Thunder Bunny 50K, which is our first like sort of step up to ultra marathon distance. But I think deep down, kind of in the back of my head, it was all to set up, putting the pieces in place to put on a race at the Shawnee Forest. And last year, 2017, we had the permits in as well, and even had like the date set and everything. And then my wife and I realized that got the news that we were expecting our second child in about that same time that the race is going to plan on taking place. So I nixed the idea for 2017 because I didn't want to have like any conflict with having a new kid or like coming early and messing up the date, because I have past experience with that happening with another race when our daughter was born early, 4 days before a race, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So pushed that to 2018, which was kind of a blessing in disguise because it gave me and some of the people that helped from the very beginning a full year and a half or almost 2 years of planning. We made sure everything was kind of in place, and it was really nice having like that added year of like getting the logistics squared away to get to the point where everything was going to be smooth. And so the whole concept of the Shawnee 50, kind of like, looking at it from 8 years ago, was just generated from not just my passion for the Shawnee Forest, but like there's so many people that I'm close to that I've had the pleasure of like introducing the Shawnee Forest to, of just really being passionate about that location and just how like big it is. It's the largest state forest, and just every run you can, I've ran thousands of miles at the Shawnee Forest, and I still come away with this feeling of refreshment, even though like the terrain's hard and it's a mental and physically challenging. I come away from it refreshed every time with this epic experience under my belt. And the goal for the Shawnee 50 was just to give other people, hopefully introduce them to that location, and hopefully they have similar epic experiences at the Shawnee Forest.
It sounds like from the comments from the finishers that it indeed was a rather epic race for many of them. Many of them first 50 milers, and some people, coming in near the top of what you were expecting. Let's move into the week of the race, kind of what goes into putting the race on during that week. Like what events have to happen, what tasks have to be completed.
Yeah, I mean, race directing, there's this sort of like timeline of events that happen. You've got from basically the planning period to the permit process, the registration, and then there's kind of a lull just waiting on registration, but you're kind of getting the pieces in place. But then like the week of the race, week and a half of the race, there's just like so much that happens, just from organizing all the food, because you can't buy the food too much in advance if it's perishable. So we made several of us made grocery trips, stored it, getting this. My buddy Joe Stewart, who was really instrumental in this process, let us use a 12-foot trailer. He brought it to my house to where I have all the race stuff stored, loaded it, organized it, got it in all the aid stations had their own separate totes. All the aid stations had their separate food divvied up, supplies, equipment divvied up, and that's a sort of a long process. And then just getting to the race site, marking it's basically the course is set up to where it's mostly a loop, so it's 47 unique miles that has to be marked. Wesley and I actually marked a good chunk of it on the week before, which was really nice. And then basically me and my buddy Reese, who lives in Portsmouth still, helped mark the 38 remaining miles of the trail. So that's basically a full 2 days. I sort of did the calculation. If you're course marking at an average of 20 to 25 minutes per mile for 47 miles, it's like 20 hours. So you're guaranteed to get some mileage or time and stuff out there. And then the day before, you have to focus on the participants, which is the number one focus, to make them have a good experience from the time they get to city that the race is in. This case, it's Portsmouth. Getting out to the race site, to the race start, till the end, till the day after or whatnot. If there's post race stuff, it has to be a very smooth process to make it a good experience. And so, as long as you've got the whole setup in place, that's the goal. You can focus completely onto the participants. And there's always things that come up, obviously, from a race management standpoint. But I think we did pretty well with that part. Wesley, you helped out a little bit. You have anything to add with the setup?
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty great, obviously. I mean, the course markings were pretty awesome. I mean, there was like never really any doubt when I was out there. I mean, I kind of know the course a little bit after running it a couple times, but yeah, it was pretty smooth.
Yeah, cool.
Let's talk about, let's get into the race a little bit for Wesley here. Does this race have any special meaning to you beyond just needing a finish for the year? Or
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say so. I mean, this race, I've known about it obviously for about a year and a half now, and I was super interested in this race, just definitely because like this race is the hardest 50 miler in Ohio by far. I mean, with 11,000 feet of vert over the course of 54 miles, it's just super tough. I was lucky enough that Michael convinced me to come out and run the course with him in January, despite being out of shape. I was a month before I ran my first 100 miler. And right after that, I took basically up until the holidays off of running. I ran like a half marathon like January 1st. And that was it.
And that was really cool for just the entire race for maybe 50 and 100 mile races. Not that many people actually ran the entire course. And that was really cool back in January, a full 10 months before the race started. You, myself, and
Travis Zipful
and Mike Cooper ran the entire course. So we had it charted, we had it GPSed. We were able to see the specs of the race and just sort of see how it flowed too, which is, I think, I've now ran all of my courses. Obviously, it's easier with the shorter courses, but I'm glad I had a chance to run the Shawnee 50 course, especially with a group of guys. And that sort of boosted the excitement because you were into it.
Yeah.
Coop and Zipfel was into it, and they're like, that's kind of free marketing, obviously. Like,
yeah.
when like you post a Strava and you get like all the followers liking and commenting on this crazy idea of a 50-mile race in Ohio with 11,000 feet of vert. It definitely had a lot of traction early.
Mm-hmm.
So from like a marketing standpoint on my end, that was like, good job, guys.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And like Seth Miller also joined us for a bunch of miles that day, and then Joe Stewart as well. So it was an awesome day back then. But
and that's something to talk about too is in the meantime, from those 8 years, I've hosted this sort of no frills, no competition, no organized I guess it would be called a fat ass in the ultra running lingo, run at the Shawnee Forest. It's for 5 years now. We call it the Convenient Adventure, which was a term coined by my friend Reese when we were doing that 40-mile run in 2010, about how we didn't need to take this crazy trip to find an adventure. It was a convenient adventure because it was right in our back, out our back door. And so I've started this thing it's either like in December, beginning of January, where I'll just throw out like a closed Facebook group to anyone interested in meeting at the Shawnee Forest for a big long run. So that's when we did the 54-mile run. That was the last year's version of it. We've done 20-mile loops. We've done 30-mile loops. We've done even shorter loops for the Convenient Adventure. So that's something we're going to keep it normal for me, especially. Give me a chance each year to sort of like have this day to run in the forest with my friends. So the Convenient Adventure was sort of like the Shawnee 50 before the Shawnee 50.
Yeah.
It wasn't a race. No one really competed, but we were able to sort of put in a long effort with vert, mostly loop styled, at the Shawnee Forest.
And most of us took our time out there. Obviously, we basically just did it like super easy pace. Like even me, like not being in shape at all at the time, was able to keep up with these guys because they were going slow.
It must have been somewhat fast because you ran.
No, we'll get there. But they luckily enough went slow enough for me to keep up with what I thought was a super slow pace at the time. But later did I find out. But
we had several breaks like where we sat down and like
ate a bunch of stuff and
food,
took
yeah.
pictures, and
Yeah.
it was a fun time.
It
But
was fun.
a couple weeks back, I mentioned this in the other trail talk that before Grindstone 100, I went out to the Shawnee Forest and did a 50-mile run solo there. And I captured about like 85% of the course. I know that I missed about 3 big climbs, and one of the biggest climbs, I guess, spec-wise.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I've been really just drawn into the Shawnee Forest and the idea of the Shawnee 50 since obviously running the course back in January. Like any chance I have to get out there now, it's almost like I have to take it. So when I realized that I should do a 50 miler before Grindstone, there was no really doubt in my mind that, hey, it has to be at the Shawnee 50 because I know it'll be tough. Have the vert and it'll just be an experience.
And that's something from my perspective that gets me really excited that like someone like Wes is equally as passionate about the Shawnee Forest as I am. And it's something I sometimes have the tendency to push on people too much. It's like, I need you to like the forest as much as I do. But it never works out that way. It has to be an authentic kind of like personal, intrinsic, like connection, like what Wes has experienced. Several of my friends have had that experience, but it's not for everyone. It really strips you raw. Like when you go there and you get stuck and you start realizing, you might be 13 miles into a run and you think you're on the same trail or same hill as you were in mile 1. It really just like, there's been times where I've been out there, even knowing the trails as well as I do, where I've gone turned around and I don't know where I'm at. And it's like, wow, like this place really keeps you on your toes, and it's not for everyone. Like it's not a beginner's race, even though it was amazing. There was so many first time 50 milers competing at the Shawnee 50 or first time ultra runners. It was really cool to see that, but it's also, I think, more so than some of my other races, more veterans at this race who has like long either mountain experience or long 100-mile, 50-mile experience under their belt.
Or just like high vert runners, or typically people who like aim for that
in their training. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's one of the other unique aspects about this particular course is a lot of times we on the East Coast get flack from West Coast runners where we don't have grueling or hard or difficult courses. And I think the Shawnee is a prime example of, we can have very difficult and very hard courses here on the East Coast.
I love it. I mean, I love hearing, even people that live in the East Coast, their perception of Ohio is the flat cornfield state, because if they have experience with Ohio, it's because they've either driven through the upper part where you're on I-80 or I-70 and you're going through Columbus or going through Cleveland or Toledo, and it is flatter up there. And then you've got the West Coast people who, first of all, they just disrespect the East Coast races in general, but they don't understand how frequent hills that are super steep is in my opinion, after running plenty of West Coast races and East Coast races, I think the short, steep, frequent hills are more damaging on your body than the long, sustained, smooth uphills. There's just a grind. It's almost like a fartlek for hills. A fartlek is when you're changing pace a lot in like a track workout. It's just like speed work. But in vert, you're changing your incline a lot.
Yeah.
As soon as you reach the summit of a hill, or a foothill, I guess is what it's considered, you're going straight down.
Yeah, and then enjoy it for 10 seconds because you're going right back down to the bottom.
I mean, there's like one flat section on the course, and that's not even that flat.
Yeah, though when we were doing the course in January, we were talking about specs, and of the 54 miles done at like a 12-hour, 45-minute pace, only 42 minutes of the route was considered flat ground.
Yeah,
from what our watches told us.
Yeah,
so
like the Moves Count app breaks it down based on your incline, and that's crazy.
So 42 minutes of the 12 and a half hours or a little more was considered flat. So
when you start looking at the elevation profile, it really is hard to put it, kind of like hard to envision what it's like, because it's just like jagged saw blade, and it's I ran down the numbers. It's 18 specific climbs of 300 feet or more. Most of those are under a mile in distance. So you got that plus the downhills of the equal numbers. And then there's probably another 20 to 30 hills that are like 100 to 150 feet. When you squish that into 54 miles, it's like, your leg, it's just so punishing for your legs. I don't think, like, the winning time this year was 9:29. I think it can go a lot faster because it was a bit muddy this year, and some of the top competition wasn't there. But I think it can go a lot faster. But I think there's a limit on what the course record will end up being in the future. I don't know what that limit is, but it's not super fast.
Nice.
Cool.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we can dive into like my race now, and
Yeah.
Let's hear, like, hear it from the start for you, and just give us kind of the rundown of your day, and then like some of the highlights and stuff.
for sure. So I started this race obviously after DNFing from Grindstone and DNSing from the Columbus Marathon. This race was kind of big for me just to get one last finish under my belt for 2018. That's really all I cared about. I didn't have any intention of keeping up with any of the fast guys. I basically just like took it super simple from the beginning, and I kept joking with them like, hey, I don't want to see you guys at any point in the race. Don't bonk, because I don't want to catch up to you guys and pass you. But yeah, I had a lot of fun out there. This race is obviously a lot of fun. So from the start, I took it super conservative. There's a fun little downhill section for the first road mile, and it actually started snowing like at the starting line, which was super cool because the race started.
It was not in the forecast either.
No.
Like, it was not supposed to snow, but it did.
We were like, "What's going on here?" And it's like a magical moment, just riding down the pavement there as the snow was hitting us in the face. But yeah, so the race starts like a 7-mile loop, and a few of those are trail miles. And then it hits like a road downhill section, and I was feeling pretty smooth through those points. I was running with Alec Torgerson, and Tim Crow was like bouncing around at that point. We were just having some fun, chatting it up, talking about the race and other races we were doing at the time. So the first 7 miles in the initial loop like went by really fast for me. Like, I was surprised to hit that first aid station. And then we headed up for the next 47 miles, which is like the distinct part of the loop.
One loop, right?
Yeah.
From once you do that opening loop, it's you're out there on it.
Yeah, so you're nowhere close to
which is following, like, from a logistics standpoint, at the Shawnee Forest, there's the 40-mile backpack trail. After that first 7-mile loop, you enter the trailhead for the backpack trail.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you basically remain on that until like mile 38 of that. So it's a pretty big chunk of it, and you hop back on it. So once we got back on there, like I said, it was basically just grinding through the ups and the downs. I had run the entire course basically twice. So I basically knew every turn or every up and knew what to expect after every down. So I knew what was coming around most of the turns and was able to help a few runners around me just to stay composed and really just tell them like, hey, nothing really changes the entire day. Like, for the first 10 miles, like, you saw everything. Like, there's no difference. It's just the same thing for the next 44 miles or whatever we were at that point. So we rolled up to the fire tower, which is like the first huge aid station, I would say. And it was awesome because the fire tower, you can climb it. A few runners did that, I think.
No one from your front pack did. I was able to be there, but once like Doug Usselburn, he was like, I think he was the first one that I saw go up.
Yeah,
and like he was like probably front of the middle pack, and he like set off a chain reaction because once he climbed it, I started seeing like every other person or every couple of people start climbing it.
I mean, it's an awesome thing.
And it was super windy. Like at the fire tower, it's like there's 2 ridge top aid stations, and this was one of them. And the fire towers, when you climb it, it's windy on a clear day, but like it was windy at the bottom of the fire tower. It was just like super, super cold. I was like, all right, see you, aid station workers. Like, I'm pretty cold. I'll get on to the next one.
So that was pretty cool because that was the first time. Obviously, the race started at 5 a.m. So once we hit the fire tower, it was like mile 12, and you could take off your headlamp, and the sunrise was like rising over the top of the ridge there.
Really cool.
And that was super cool to see. So at that point, I was just continuing to truck along and keep at my nice consistent pace for the beginning miles, and hit mile 20, 22 or so. And that's when I first started to like feel weird. I don't know what was happening. So I guess what I did to fix it at the time is I was like wearing leggings because it was kind of chilly that day. It was probably one of the coldest mornings of the year so far, I would say.
It definitely was. I think it got down to like 24, 26.
Yeah, it
the
was
night before.
It was pretty cold standing around.
And you were camping, right?
Yeah, so I was out there camping, and actually that wasn't bad at all.
Okay, I didn't know how that. I haven't talked to anybody about that actually. Like it was
I was totally warm.
Pretty warm. Okay,
yeah,
fine.
So,
keep it.
Yeah. So I was wearing leggings, and I haven't worn leggings obviously since probably like February, and those were just causing me like some kind of pain in my legs. Like I wasn't climbing like I normally am, and that's like one thing I kind of like pride myself on, I guess, is my ability to climb. So I wasn't doing that well, and I was like, okay, I got to make a change. So once I took off my leggings, which were around like mile 23 or so, I like instantly felt better.
Nice.
And that was kind of like what propelled me back to like after this bond, because I was like walking the downs and like a flats for like a 2 mile section at least. So once I hit the next aid station, which was Pond Lick, I believe, they helped me out a lot, and I was able to get back on my way. I ran the next big uphill and got over to Hangover aid station, which was the greatest aid station in the entire world.
You think that was the best one?
Yeah, I think it was the best one. They were all great. I'm not
We
biased.
got a lot of feedback. People loved. There was, some of the bigger aid stations were pretty decked out, but
Yes.
a lot of good. Like, what was Hangover? What was so special about Hangover?
So Hangover, the Schwitzer family was camping out there. So this aid station location was in the most remote place in the entire forest. Like they camped there from Friday until like all day Saturday and Sunday, just to like make sure all the runners like had their stuff. So luckily for them, it was cool for us because we got to. They made signs and like put signs up like one of the biggest hills, like from the bottom to the top. And I've like run the section before. I knew Michael didn't place these signs out. So when I was running the course, I'm like, who put these signs here? And I didn't know what they were for. And then like obviously like once you got closer, you realized it was for their awesome aid station. And then they continued the signs down for a mile or two down the road. And there was like motivational, funny quotes, and they really had some fun with that.
But if I understand right, I wasn't able to see the decorations, but they were dressed up as Star Wars.
Yes, so
the theme.
Yeah, so there was a Darth Vader costume involved, and they were all talking about the dark side and the Force on the sides leading up to it. Because right after their aid station is the start of the dark side loop, which is about a 10 mile loop, and that's like the hardest section of the course in my opinion. And so it was really cool for them to kick off the dark side.
Yeah, and I have something to say about the Hangover station too. Like logistically, it was sort of a pain to include this location as an aid station because it's gate access only, 4-wheel drive roads. The road's in pretty good shape, but like if it was a really, really bad year, there'd be really challenges of getting up there. This is the second ridgetop aid station, and the Switzer family was awesome. Like they had 2 4-wheel drive vehicles there. They camped there from Friday till Sunday. But the reason that Hangover had to be included was because of what this section of the forest signified to me and all of the Shawnee State teammates that I had. It's a bridle trail where it's set up. You're on the bridle trail for about a mile before you intersect it and go onto the dark side. But this Hangover trail, it's actually called Bridle Trail number 5 in the forest. We call it the Hangover Trail because legend goes, like before I got to Shawnee State, sometime in the early 2000s, these 2 guys on the team woke up one Sunday morning, hungover, of course, and they just wanted to find a new place to run. So they drove around the forest, which they didn't really know very well. And they just randomly parked at this trailhead or gate, and they ran it, and they told the coach about it. And that became a tradition for the Shawnee State cross country team, which is where I was introduced to the forest for the very first time. And it was called Hangover. Like it's always been called Hangover. And we have some other names like place markers out there that are probably not suitable to repeat that we all named throughout the years. But, when I was talking about the race concept with some of my teammates, I was like, man, we have to include Hangover as like a central aid station. And so it's just like so fitting, like sort of like serendipity that like I saw a picture from the aid station. They had like "Welcome to Hangover" on like their tent, and I was like, that's so amazing. Like it's like they went over and beyond, but like they don't realize how important that ended up being for me. Like I was able to send that picture to all my old teammates, and it's like, guys, like check out like how cool this station is, and like what this Hangover has like meant to not only us now, like to all the runners in the race. So I think that's the coolest side. Like it's just like it just made the whole weekend like that much better. Like all these other side stories that came along for me that might not mean much to other people, but like for me and my close friends that like know what that means. Like it's just so cool.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
So like thanks to like the Switzer family for making that happen.
Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. And so like once I hit that point in the race, like I had a lovely aid station food. They had some hot chocolate coffee and potatoes and some other good stuff. I'm forgetting about grilled cheese or something like that. And I just was at that point totally like rejuvenized, but I wasn't moving that much faster. So at that point, I just knew I was gonna like pretty much flatline the rest of the day and just like basically just bring it into the finish.
Was there ever a point that you thought about dropping out?
No, I knew I couldn't drop from this race because I have a little thing. I can't drop from a 50 miler yet. Not like all of us, but
I think it was one of those creek crossings that me and Michael were sitting at where we're like, where's Wes at? Where's Wes? Where's Wes?
It was sort of a long, because we were at that next aid station, the Twin Creek one, and like eventually I had to get back to the finish line, but like there was a little like, oh man, I haven't seen Wes yet.
Yeah, no, it never crept into my mind. Because like I said, I've done the course twice now, so I knew that at the worst I could finish it. Even at Pond Lick when I was bonking, I told you that like, I mean, like it's taken me 6 hours to get here. I think it was like mile 23 or so.
Yeah, you had another 11 to go.
Yeah.
Hours.
And I was like, well, I have another 11 hours. I could walk it in at this point. Yeah. So I knew like there was no point for me.
And like you weren't, like from my perspective at Pond Lick at 28, you weren't the only one that was bonking. I think that was, even at Camp Oyo at 22 or 23, people were really suffering. And I was like, wow, this race is putting a beat on some of these guys. And like I said, like there's no aid station that you come into fresh, because you have the hills, but like Pond Lick was one where like it wasn't even like a major aid station from like a size standpoint, but people were taking their time. Ethan, our buddy Ethan, changed his outfit completely, stripped down,
and that led him on to absolutely crush the second half of the race.
So it sounds like like your clothes change and his clothes change really kind of like, which is crazy because like for a 50-mile race, a lot of people don't think about changing outfits.
Yeah,
but for for this one, it's definitely needed sometimes. But like you weren't the only one struggling. I saw a lot of people taking their time coming into that aid station and then like hesitating going out. And there were some drops. Like that was where we started seeing some more drops. At Pond Lick.
And so from there, after the hangover aid station is like the part of the course that I've marked and I know pretty well at this point. So I was really excited because those next 6 miles are like my favorite 6 miles in the entire forest. Yeah. So I was having some fun through there. Got down to Twin Creek aid station, which was at mile 38 for the first Twin Creek aid station. And that's where we saw OU Trail Running Club and everyone else that was there. And that was a lot of fun to see.
That aid station was set up really cool. Aid station captain Chris Hale, plus the OU Trail Running Club came to help out. It was like I've never seen, like from one of my races at least, like a whole, like they had like 4 tables set up in a line with 2 tents, I think, and they had like several burners going with hot foods and like John, you were there. Like, was that pretty cool?
All the PB&Js and quesadillas made to order.
Definitely, it was really neat.
It was a warm aid station for the cold day that was happening.
It was, yeah.
So we were moving pretty well through there. After that, like it was just a 5-mile loop to the next Twin Creek aid station. And this is actually like a weird part. So I was doing really well, just kind of keeping the same thing. Nothing really changed throughout my day after I changed clothes and all that. But descending down that trail, and that's the park that me and you marked the week before, I somehow, it was a switchback. And there's not that many switchbacks in the Shawnee 50, but there's a few. Yeah. And for some reason, I must have not even realized how tired I was or what was going on. But I came down a switchback and then like didn't see where the trail went. So I kept looking like off to these directions. And then like I had to like turn around. So I like was trying to find the trail. And when I turned around and did like a 360 to locate the trail, the first pink blaze I saw was pointing upwards. And so at this point, I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because I know I'm supposed to be descending down to the aid station. I just did it last week. And then so I was like, okay, but I'm just going to continue with it because I didn't see the one on the bottom for whatever reason. And so I like head up the trail for about 10 more seconds. And then this awesome guy comes down and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what are you doing? And so we were both very confused because his watch was off by like a mile or so. And we were trying to do the math on like where we were and like trying to figure out like, well, did you drop down? And I was like, yeah, I dropped down. I'm like, well, I did too. And then luckily enough, he convinced me that we were supposed to continue on the way. And once we got like another 100 feet, I realized that like, oh, that's the tree we cleared out last week and we're heading the right direction. But that was a super weird moment for me to especially get a little turned around on a course that I marked.
Yeah, you were there like literally like the week before. But like from my standpoint now as a race director, like that's definitely my fault. Like, switchbacks you're supposed to really kind of just like shore up with like multiple flags on the side of the switchback and then multiple assurance flags. So like I actually, one of those aid station workers who had hiked that section the night before or day before told me that could have been confusing, and I had full intentions of sending somebody out there to put out more flags, and it just escaped my mind like once the race actually started. And I did hear, like, you weren't the only one. There was probably like 3 or 4 that actually mentioned it to me, but it was one of those things that was like 2 minutes max of like confusion, or maybe even like a minute.
Yeah,
just like, oh shoot, let's find that flag.
Yeah,
and it ended up being okay. But like,
yeah,
because switchbacks are so few and far between, people just aren't looking for switchbacks.
Exactly.
But eventually, if you blew by the switchback, you'd just be in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, I mean, there was no trail there, and I was trying to do my best to find it.
This is not Barkley.
Yeah. After I got down to that aid station, I saw some awesome other people there, Nick Voss and Ian Ackers, and a few other people were there hanging out. And basically just went on my way. There was a big creek crossing at the next aid station, and I really just took a nosedive into that one. I couldn't say I went head first, but I basically went head first into that creek.
Cannonball?
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Did you fall?
No, I didn't fall.
Okay.
I just deliberately jumped in it, like in the way that I could possibly get like as most wet as possible, just to like rejuvenate myself a little bit. And then I remember Nick told me after the race, he's like, at that point, I knew you were going to finish, Wesley, because that was just ridiculous. But
if you're having fun, you're more likely to.
I instantly regretted it because I got really wet, and that wasn't a lot of fun. But after that, just continued on my day, and it eventually ended up finishing the Shawnee 50 at that last aid station. My girlfriend Molly was camping out and was with me all weekend, and she made it around to like every aid station, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. And she gave me my headlamp, which I didn't expect to need again. And I was descending down like the last couple miles of the course is like the same as the first couple miles of the course. Mm-hmm. And I like knew I was coming up on the last descent, and I knew that I was really close to it getting dark out. And I was like, I really don't want to put this headlamp on. So I actually refused. I told myself I'm not putting this thing on because I should have finished this race an hour ago or a little longer before. But so I finished in the dark. Like, obviously in my finisher video, you can tell I was just coming up the trail with nothing, but it was a lot of fun. I actually ended up finishing the race in 12 hours and 51 minutes, I believe, which is 5 minutes or 6 minutes slower than we did it in January. And this is just ridiculous because we obviously took our time in January and it was just a ho-hum kind of day.
And your goal was 11, like you're sort of like, goal was 11:30.
Yeah, no, my goal was 11:30 for the race.
It seems doable after running it basically in 12:45.
Yeah. Oh,
before.
Definitely.
And that was a very normal goal for you, I think.
And even in a couple weeks prior when I did the 50 miles there, not 54, but 50, it was 10:45. Yeah. So if you just extrapolate 4 miles out, 11:30 seems pretty doable. But on the race day, it was not. And I think
that's cool. Like it's not a true mountain experience because it's not mountains, but it's the foothills of the Appalachians. And like anyone who's ran mountain races know how much weather or just other variables caused by the mountains can play in your race times. And it wasn't like the weather was crazy from a footing standpoint, but like it was cold and there was X amount of water crossings that aren't normally water crossings because of the rain that we had leading up to the race. Just all that adds time eventually over the course of this very grueling kind of like weather dependent course. And so, I think that we saw that a lot on finishing times.
So I had a blast out there. It was a lot of fun to officially finish the Shawnee 50.
And I was glad to be there, man, to see you finish. And we've joked a lot about you not getting your finish lately, but it was cool. I knew you'd do it as well. Kind of when I saw you trudge through some of those aid stations looking rough, but like still like positive attitude.
Yeah. And there was a lot of other awesome performances on the days as well. I mean, we can talk about some of those.
Running through just like the top of the leaderboard, Travis Simpson ended up winning. He just, he told me when he finished that he didn't have any low moments. I think that's what it takes to win. He wasn't in first place until I think he took first place like right after Pond Lick at 28. So he took the lead over halfway through. Jacob Conrad, who he took the lead from, ended up finishing second, about 30 minutes behind him. They were both under 10 hours. And then third place was Mike Cooper, who, I guess this is a good segue into Mike Cooper. So from a race directing standpoint and just like an overall participant experience, there were 5 people who didn't have great experiences at the beginning of the race, which is a real shame on my end. It's my fault in the end. But at mile 7, that first aid station, the opening loop, you do the opening loop, you come through the first aid station, and then you cross the main road, Route 125, and you begin the 47-mile loop. The first group of 5 got to that first aid station, which was manned by the awesome students at OU, many of them who've taken my classes, and they just weren't given clear directions from me, and they weren't shown exactly what to do. And so they inadvertently sent the first 5 people back up that opening loop trail. Basically, they were sending them to redo that 7-mile loop. I arrived at that first aid station right after that 5th person got sent up there. Wasn't able to flag them down because they were too far up in the trail. And I was able to kind of get it corrected, get the 6th place person, which was Ethan Sleeman and Travis, who ended up winning, pointed in the right direction. So like from that moment, like just like frantic mode on my end. I'm like, even though like I knew like it only affected 5 out of the 90 runners, it's still like you don't want that to happen. Like that should never happen to the front pack, and it did. And it's like it's such a really deflating experience because at that point you can't get it back to where it should be. So what I did was I jumped in the truck. I drove the really challenging access road to where it intersected the trail 3 miles later, hoping the whole time that they would realize what they did before they got to me, which is what happened. But it didn't happen until they did 3.2 extra miles. It was a group of Travis Zitfeld, who has ran the course.
Yes. Mike Cooper,
who's also ran the course. And then there was a Zach Marin, part of that group, James Fox, who was part of that group. And then I forget the kid's name from Boulder, Colorado, who came in to do this race. But those 5 were the ones that went up the wrong direction. And eventually Travis and Mike sort of realized that they were doing the same loop again and that they didn't cross the road that they were supposed to cross. But like I said, it was 1.6 miles of the trail, and then they had to turn around, and it was 250, 300 feet of vert added.
Yeah.
And in the end, like it doesn't define the race, but it sort of does define the race for those 5 people. So like it's all my fault in the end. It's one of those things that like you have snags as a first year event, and that's a given. But like this one's like kind of big and kind of stings because Travis Zitfeld ended up dropping, and James Fox ended up dropping, and I don't want to say that they would have done great otherwise. You never know, but like it would have changed the outcome, I think, at some point. Mike Cooper finished 3rd still. He climbed his way back up into 3rd place,
which is absolutely crazy.
Zach Marin climbed his way back up into 5th place, and they basically had over 30 minutes of like time they lost. Yeah.
So I was at mile 18 or so, and that's when I saw Travis Zitfeld at the time, who was in first, or we're trying to regain. He was the first place guy, and he took off from the rest of the 5 that got lost. And he was pushing hard to get back up. And I saw this guy like coming behind us, and I was talking to Alec, and I was like, well, let's not get discouraged here. Like there's this guy coming back, but he's like really pushing this uphill, and we're doing just fine where we are. So no worries. And like when he got closer, we realized that I was like, oh, it's Travis. And I was like, what happened? And he told me, and I was like, obviously felt discouraged for him. But eventually I saw Mike Cooper, Zach Marin, and everyone else like catch back up to me. And
what was it like to see who you thought was in first or top to come back from behind you?
It was definitely a weird experience. And I kind of like not knew something was up, but like at the first aid station at Fire Tower, they only told me that the leaders were up 12 minutes on us. And I did the math, and we were probably running like 11, 12 minute pace at that time. And I'm like, why are those guys running like 10-minute pace, 11-minute pace? Like, why are they just hanging out up there, like having a tea party? And eventually I realized it was Travis Simpson, Ethan Sleeman, and Conrad, who were the three up there battling it out. And Ethan Sleeman, 20 years old, Ohio University, debut 50, was in first place for
which I'm sure was strange
that
for
race.
Strange for him. Like, he's someone who's competitive, but like probably never expected to be in the lead of a 50-mile race, especially his debut. But
I know I wouldn't.
Yeah, but like he was certain in that situation. And I think Travis Simpson, it played into his advantage, obviously, because he won. But yes, Ethan ended up finishing 6th, which was an amazing debut still. But yeah, that was kind of a crazy outcome. And, once it wore off, like eventually my heart rate came down and like I accepted what had happened. I was able to apologize to all 5 of those guys on the course, which is, I debated whether I had to apologize, but like you do, I think that was the right thing to do. And it felt right from an RD standpoint. But, and then I was just kind of gutted when the 2 guys did end up dropping out because they were real contenders. I think, Travis that feels having he's had an amazing year so far, and he was the 1 seed. He might have won, he might have not, who knows. He told me after the race that dropping out wasn't related to the wrong turn. But I like to think that he would have finished otherwise. And then James Fox, who dropped out, like it was his first time ever running like an ultra on this type of terrain. He'd never even seen that type of terrain before. So I don't know, I'm not going to go as far as saying like, oh, he would have finished in that top 5 if he didn't make the wrong turn, because like it's a long race.
Yeah.
And those guys who finished top 5 deserve a top 5 still, in my opinion.
Definitely.
But like, yeah, it's just one of those like situations of the race. And like I said, like half the people there probably has no idea that happened. And that wasn't affecting their experience, but it's definitely was like from my perspective as a race director, and like John was kind of there in the midst of all of it with the camera, and some of the people that were like with me doing the course rundown kind of saw the ugly side of race directing and the poor volunteers that kind of got
definitely got the blood flowing at 5 or 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
6 a.m. It's one of those things too, like
Michael come and like just running back and forth. I'm like, what's going on? And then I realized that they had gone up the wrong direction, and I was like,
it's one of those things too, like where the aid station tent was set up. It was just a pretty small water stop too. Was set up literally like 100 feet from where it should have been, but it was kind of a really instrumental fork in where the runner should go. And it was definitely crucial.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, like from at the end point, I should have either been there, tell them where to set up, or had somebody completely show them X marks the spot. This is where you're setting up, and this is where you're telling them to go. If it was daylight, I think it would have been way different.
Yeah.
If it was a second year event like next year, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's what happened, and you just got to roll with the punches, I think, sometimes. And eventually, it was moving on to the next issue.
Yeah.
Which luckily it wasn't very many issues the rest of the day on my part. But
I was thinking that like if I was just up in the front pack with them, or if they would have just hung out for like a couple of minutes, like, and just wait till I got there. I don't know how many minutes back at that point I was, but I would have been able to like, hey, this way, guys.
And kind of a funny story from that era is Adam Wise, who was doing his first ultra. He would have been in that front pack, but he had tripped and fell like at mile, I don't know, 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it took him a while to kind of get up from that fall, which put him like a bit back, and he was saved.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't with that top 5 pack. He was able to kind of get directed on the right way at that point. Unfortunately, he ended up dropping out too. But yeah, like it was just a crazy, unfortunate situation. In the end, it's something I'll learn from and not repeat.
Is there any other things that went bad that day, or any other issues?
Not much. I mean, there's a moment like right after that, just to keep the heart flowing, where I went back up to the lodge, got some quick cell phone reception. I got a message from the fire tower aid station crew, which was the mile 12, and they were like, "Hey, where's our water?" And I'm like, "Oh crap! Like, did I not give them water?" I was like, all these moving parts, and like I think in the back of my mind, I thought that aid station already had jugs, like the people working had brought their own jugs, but it was actually the next aid station who had their aid station or had their jugs already. it ended up being okay because like we got there plenty of time before runners had got there in the end. But it's like, once again, like I was like, Don, get in the truck. We're going to the like Don was our water, like he had the water in the back of his truck. Like once again, happened to kind of speed through the forest roads to get to Fire Tower to give him water. But like after that, I really don't think there was a point where I was pressured. I was able to kind of like spectate a little bit, which was really cool. And just kind of like help the runners at aid stations, help the aid station workers. And then eventually kind of like an hour and a half or so before the finishers came up, I was kind of get the finish line set up and ready for runners to come through. And from there, it was just like from basically 2:00 until 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, people all the way up to the cutoff. But luckily, we didn't have to cut anybody off.
Which was surprising in my opinion. 17 hours was the cutoff. And it was originally set at 16 hours until that January run, 4 miles extra. I wasn't going to change the course distance to meet the need for the cutoff, so I just simply changed the cutoff for the course. And that's sort of the philosophy of my race directing too. Is like, I'm not going to alter the course in a way that's going to make no sense. You know, I want the course to make sense. And people were like, "Oh, why was it 54 miles? Why wasn't it just 47? Or you know, why couldn't you have made that first loop, 3 miles to make it a firm 50?" But it's just like I think the course flowed the perfect way, and that's the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I had that ability to make. I could make the course 68 miles if I want to. And
as the runner and the participant from the race, like I love knowing because like you after the January run, I think it was initially like labeled as like the Shawnee 50, but like. And you thought it was 50 miles or close to it. You didn't know 51, 52, or maybe 48. But after that run we did, like you basically established like, hey, it's 54-mile run, and you put that like everywhere. And that was awesome.
Everyone knew it was 54. It's one of those things too, like where over the years of the Shawnee State Forest, they do a lot of logging out there. They do a lot of reroutes. Like I think at one time, based on like the mileages that I first sort of calculated, based on like the maps, it probably would have been closer to 50. But after they sort of did some work, since those maps were published, they extended some of the trails. They kind of worked around some plots of land, and it did increase the mileage based on like all the maps and publications where I sort of like initially got some of the numbers. And then like when we ran it, like I said, like I got 54.2.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I saw a single person that ran the race get 54. I think it was all between like 33 or
33.
Some of the watches that died early, no, but 53 and 54. I even saw some like 52 and a half. And, it's just GPS error. There's probably better ways to get course specs, but I just basically took my GPS spec, overlaid it onto some like other mapping services, and then just use that method to get the distance.
And all the aid stations are right on. Like
exactly.
It's like a GPS like marking, like you came into it and like you were, at least mine, like was within 0.05 or 0.02.
And that's one of those things like from a trail race, it's pretty expected. Like at Western States, like the most prestigious 100-miler, like my watch, I ended up getting the 100-mile distance, but like all the different, like, you're just off a mile or two, or like a mile or half a mile at least every aid station. And
even grindstone for me, I think I dropped at mile 23, 22, but I think my watch only got 20.
Exactly. So it's just one of those things, like it's not a road marathon where you're getting USATF certified. If anyone wants to certify the Shawnee course, then be my guest. But
it'd be an interesting course to use a wheel on.
Or I don't know, a string or something.
Yeah, up and down.
But yeah, like that. Yeah, like crazy.
Let's talk about your seeds. You did pretty well on the female side, right?
Yeah, so like some of the fun we have before races, I'll seed out the top 10 men and women. I was way off on the men. Too many drops. Those guys didn't live up to my expectations. But no, just joking. But the women, like it was a pretty competitive women's field in my opinion. Mika Thews ended up winning, and I gave her the 2 seed. Amanda Debevic was second. I gave her the 1 seed, and I think who was third? Alicia Roberta was third overall, and she was the 3rd seed. So I think this top 6 seeds were correct from what I see of them, from what they finished in different order. But yeah, the women field was very strong, and that was one of those cases where like Mika, who won, She's ran several 200-mile races. She's experienced. Amanda DeBevick just came off the Grindstone 100. She was a very experienced runner. Crystal Shanowski, who's won Thunder Bunny, our race twice, who's also ran Grindstone a month ago, she got 6th place, I think. So it was one of those cases where like the women's field was very much like an experienced crew. And I think the men's side was less experienced, which led to more drops. Travis is experienced. Both Travis's, the one that dropped is, it wasn't due to lack of experience for him, but like a couple of the ones that did drop who were seated in the top 10 probably was due to lack of experience, just kind of getting thrown out there in an environment they weren't used to. So I think I only got like 2 or 3 of the top 10 men, like even finishing in the top 10. So I was like, next year.
Yeah.
Speaking of next year, do you want to talk about maybe plans or there's a lot of talk about maybe extending that some more to some 2 weeks. I've heard that question.
Yeah, people like it's funny. Like I loved hearing the reaction from people that they finished. Like some people hated it. Some people were like, you should have finished this up the road mile instead of like this very straight up finish on the trail.
Don't change that.
Like just like you get stuff from both sides, but like some people were like, oh man, imagine if this was a 2 mile or a 2-loop 100-mile course. That's not going to happen like in 2019. So don't get your hopes up or don't get too discouraged because that won't happen in 2019. But it's like on my radar for sure. Like if I'm going to put on a 100-mile race at some point in my race directing career, first, like I need to make sure it's not overpressing volunteers or like it's not overpressing me. Like I love doing it, but like you do need like basically double the volunteers. Have split shifts and stuff for volunteer positions, but it would be amazing if it was a 2-loop 22,000 feet of vert course in Ohio. Like people would be like, are they on a different planet? But,
which Ohio are we talking about?
or there's also like the possibility of making a single loop 100-miler. Like I think that's doable in the Shawnee Forest because if you haven't been there to run all the trails, there are so many trails on the outside of this loop, and then there's so many trails on the inside of this loop that weren't even utilized.
Touched.
Also, there's like 120 miles of bridle trail and forest service road that weren't used that much either. It wouldn't be 20,000 feet of vert if I used some of these access roads because there'd be longer stretches of like flatter or gradual downhills. But like it's possible, and that's something that I'll consider and look into for future years. But for 2019, the Shawnee 50 will take place in very similar setup. It might be. I haven't like I'm putting in some of the initial like permits and stuff right now, but it may be a date change. So be on the lookout. Like I hope to have like registration open the same time as I did this past year, January 1st. But it could be, I'm looking at like possibly, if not the same date, up in October, a couple weeks ahead. And that's just due to lots of different reasons that don't need to be going into, but like you weigh a lot of different options for moving a race date. I love this date of the second weekend of November, but there's also a very busy calendar of races that same weekend. There's also other activities that happen in the forest that could dictate race dates and so forth. So yeah, anyway, it's going to happen for sure. I've already basically got like everyone at the park in the forest loved it. All the forest managers and the law enforcement people out there, they weren't like super involved, but like they were there sort of like looking from the periphery, like, all right, making sure no one's doing anything illegal. But like they were like such a huge help in terms of like obviously okaying the event to begin with, but also just like providing some services that like we couldn't do otherwise as volunteers. So like they're cool with it and they want to see it happen. They think it's crazy as like an outsider, like not being in the ultra running scene. So now they're exposed to it, and I think it's just gonna like, maybe I'm really ambitious with this race, but like I think it's going to grow a lot, not just from the participants numbers, but also from people from the area, volunteers wanting to be involved in the Shawnee 50. And I think that's amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people I was talking to like were bummed just because this year they had something else on their radar for like this weekend. But I know that like in the future they definitely have this race on their A plan for next year, and I'm excited for a lot of new people to experience this race.
Coming back,
and I'll definitely be back. I gotta best my time, so
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
What place did you end up finishing? I don't even know.
25th.
25th?
And I actually had the 22nd bib. So
that's pretty close.
You were
on
kind
your
of pretty
seat.
close on
Okay.
that too. So,
Okay.
so
I think
well
next
done.
year I'm just going to seed out the race, and like Mika finished top 10. Like I'll just seed her just like overall. Like don't even separate men and women because like women will definitely finish pretty high up against any men's field.
Yeah,
at this
especially
race.
at that course.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
And they did really well. So
yeah. So I think also too, like people like to. A lot of people will wait for a first year event to sort of happen to see if it's reputable because like there's so many races that aren't necessarily reputable that might die out after 1 year or get a bad rap. And obviously, like if you're one of those top 5 people, like you might not be super thrilled, but hopefully, like I know a lot of those guys personally, and hopefully it's like no big deal from a coming back standpoint. But maybe who knows?
Yeah.
Might come back with a vengeance next year to win.
True. They got a chip on their shoulder, possibly.
We want to get that off.
Yeah.
They'll know where to go.
And John, like you were there all day. I think you should at least talk a little bit about your experience. What were you doing out there, and what did you think?
Well, so I got there bright and early. I think I left Athens around 2 a.m. and I ended up showing up around 3:30 in the morning to a very, very cold start. But I think it shows the planning that went involved because when I showed up, it wasn't like, what do we do? It was the truck was open, the trailer was open, everything was laid out, it was all good to go. Like everything was smooth because, like you said, you have those previous years of experience now under your belt, race directing, and you moved up to this bigger distance. But my main goal obviously was filming and trying to capture everything that I could have, and so I was able to get, from my perspective, a really good shots of the incidents happening, the follow up on how that worked. But we also got to see all of the main leaders. We pretty much made it to almost every single aid station, I think.
Yeah.
And got to see all of probably the top 10 come through on each one of those.
So John, just kind of a quick aside, like John was representing Ridge Runners, our show, as a filmer, basically, videographer, photographer. So like me, we worked together with this endeavor, but like also race director to you, like thank you because you put out so much coverage. It's still going to be rolling through in the coming weeks that like most races don't have that. And I think that's also something that's unique about the Shawnee 50 is like this sort of like has an old school feel to it, but also has some of these new feel things with media coverage, with photo and video, and like so. Thank you for helping put the Shawnee 50 on the map as well. So how did all that shooting go?
It went pretty well. I mean, I think uploading there was 57 videos for all of the finishers because some people came in pairs and single. And I think from almost the moment I got there, that was like the goal.
Yeah,
I was like, I wanted to get footage of everybody, not just the top leaders, which is what happens in most cases.
Right.
And in my running world, I'm not the front pack person. I'm a mid packer, mid backpacker. Like I don't finish top. I just kind of run to have fun, and I don't normally get the same experience at races because when I finish, they've already done the award ceremony and everyone's been who was there gone. So I think it was important for me to try to catch everybody coming through, and a lot of those families don't necessarily get to make it down or travel the distance to come see that kind of thing. And especially when you don't know how long the race is going to take, come ask your parents to come sit around for 12 hours, right? Because you're like, I could come in between 10 hours, or if something goes wrong, cut off. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I stood up there all day in the cold and with you and stuff like that, and got all those shots, and uploaded them all, and was really happy with that final product. And we should hopefully have a video coming out soon. Wes is going to edit that together.
It should be fun.
This is not my part for Ridge Runners, guys. It's just like I'm here, but like they're doing all the fancy work behind the scenes. I'm just a face.
I just really hope that everyone enjoyed it on all those videos, and I think from my perspective so far, it seems like the feedback has been positive.
I enjoyed it from my experience, like kind of getting to go back and look at, like you said, all 75 finishers of the 90. Very good finishers rate, by the way. All their videos, and I forget all that stuff because it's happening so fast. I'm thinking about all the race directing duties, but like I was able to sort of go back and look at some of the videos of people I know and people that I thought had some compelling stories. It's really cool. Like as a runner myself, like how often do you get a finisher's video at an ultra? Like it's very rare. And so thanks for that. But also just like having you up there, there's like a core group of us, like my sister who was doing the timing, myself and you and Dawn for most of the day and JB for most of the day. And as all the aid station workers came back in, it's like, even though it was so cold out there were a lot of us out there kind of braving the elements, waiting for all the finishers all through the night. And it got cold.
It did. I think the coldest it was the fire tower, though. I think that I was in a pure shiver up there. I mean, I went up to the top just to take a view, which was like absolutely gorgeous up there. And they're like, yeah, that was cold. That's kind of a ruthless.
Well, that was actually the coldest part of the day, because the forecast for that Saturday was, I think it was like 27, 26, and then it got 8 a.m. basically when we were driving through there.
Mm-hmm.
It was the coldest part of the 2-day stretch there. So it was like down to 24 at 8 a.m. with the wind chill, which was probably like 15, which is not what we're used to.
Yeah.
It stunk, man.
One of the other things I found interesting was doing all those videos. I realized that it's going to be really hard for me to ever want to run this race unless I find somebody to take over the filming piece, because that's something that I don't want to drop next year, and I don't want to see it go away. And I want to have it be on the inaugural race and then not show up next year. So
it's now that it's happened, like you said, like it's hard to drop that part of it. And like I've been to races, those low key races that like you finish and like there's either one person there. Like I've been to races actually like when it's really cold where I finish and there's no one there, and you have to go into the building and be like, hey, I finished. but like I think like I make it a point at all my races to try to be there. Me and my sister, like she's done the timing for basically every single race I've put on. She's always there, but like just giving them a high five, give them a hug. Like these runners, like they might not have family there. They need somebody to be there. Some of them are broken down. Some of them are elated. Some of them are laying on the floor in pain, but saying, this is awesome. But like, I think like I look at my job as a race director and like, I really respect that position. In a way, like I want to be up front, but also in the background at the same time with some of the behind the scenes stuff. But like in the end, I want to be there, like giving everybody a high five or a hug, being the first person to contact.
I think you were there for everybody but one. You were in the bathroom for one finisher.
I tried to make those bathroom breaks very timely.
It's so hard though. You don't know who's coming up the hill.
Exactly.
There's no idea to know.
Like there were several like 25, 30-minute gaps. Especially early, whereas like I should have took advantage of those times. But like, my wife, just like shout out to my wife who like was kind of bringing me hot food throughout the day, and like my daughter and son was there, and like luckily the lodge too, like which was a great finishing venue in my opinion. So they had like hot coffee ready for all the runners, and that was something they just do, for free. And just like they had hot showers waiting for runners. Yeah. I know people were so
there was
happy.
A fire.
Yeah, fireplace in the lodge.
Awesome.
And they had a restaurant that some people use in a lounge so people could get beer and post race, food and beverages, which I'd love to like continue that relationship and grow that and have it more of a festive type finish, which it sort of was anyway, without doing anything special. But like, yeah, it was cool. I loved it a lot. Like the lodge for anyone who's not visited the Shawnee State Park, it's in my opinion, one of the coolest lodges in Ohio or that I've been to, overlooking the whole forest, huge timber frame lobby with 2 fireplaces, nice leather couches. People were passed out on those couches after the race too. It was like a war zone.
Non-biased. It's the best park and lodge in all of Ohio. Like that's kind of like what puts it like this race. Like, I mean, obviously I've run all around Ohio and I'll make this kind of short, but I mean, there's nothing like it. I mean, You can go to like up north. That's where I'm from, like Cleveland area where I'm from. There's nothing there. You can go a little south, Cambridge, nothing there. I mean, You could go a different bunch of other places, and it's just not the same. Like I've done a bunch of races and been all around the state to all different parts, and there's nothing like the Shawnee Forest. And then the lodge is also super awesome. So
the lodge is like, it's just every time I go in there, it has this distinct smell. Like it smells like it was just built, even though it's I don't know how, it's pretty old. But like it smells just so rustic, and that's kind of what they're obviously going for. But
John, if you want to run the race next year, I'll just I'll take over the filming duties. I'll win the race, and then film myself coming in, and then I'll take over everyone else's.
That's how it's going to work next year, right?
If that's how you want to do,
We'll
just
see.
let me know.
You'll run like a 9.5 hours in January for the adventure race this year. And then you'll run a 13 hours.
You know me so well.
Cool. Anything else to add? I feel like there's some things that I probably didn't talk about. I mean, from a race, I mean, there's so many things that I could talk about, but don't need to bore the audience on all the mundane tasks of race.
Do real quick future stuff. So, like, what do you have planned for the future for yourselves for races and what's going on?
So for me, I'm taking a couple of months actually to train for a race. Kind of crazy. I don't normally do that. Normally I take.
Wait, you're training for a race?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't normally do that. I normally take like a week or two to just gear up for it. But I'm taking some time to train for Mount Mitchell Challenge 40 miler in February. So that's next on my radar. And then from there, I'll kick off into my summer season.
Summer season.
Right.
From a personal racing standpoint, I'm also doing the Mount Mitchell 40 miler.
See you there?
Yeah, I'll see you there somewhere. But there's another group of us traveling to do that. Travis Zittfeld, Nick Voss,
Alex Jackson,
Paul Barty, the 40 miler. But there's a lot of guys doing the marathon distance. But like Mount Mitchell Challenge, kind of a historic race down in North Carolina up to the highest point of the East Coast. So kind of fitting for us ridge runners.
Yeah, check it out.
But I've considered getting on the track this winter. Is that a good idea or not?
You go for it. I'll let you do your thing.
I haven't ran a track race since 2011.
I'm excited to see your track.
It probably won't happen. I say this every year. But from a race directing standpoint, SEOTR will get back on our spring schedule with Iron Furnace going into its 6th year, April 6th. Thunder Bunny 50K, 25K, 12K. May 12th, 11th, one of those, the second weekend of May. Registration for both those races are open.
Iron Furnace also has a 4.5 mile race.
Yes, 4.5 mile race. Great. Those two races are just great for, like Iron Furnace is super challenging, but it's great for entry level as well. Like if you're doing your first trail race.
Yeah.
Because it's not an intimidating distance, whether you're doing the 4.5 or the 13.1. But, and then I can't talk too much about this, but Stay tuned for a new race that SEOTR may put on. Might be in March, and it might be a little obscure.
So
I can't go any further than that. But
we'll save you guys the fun details.
I swore to Wes that it'd be up the registration for that race if it happens. Will be up in 2 weeks.
Give them a month, but we'll see.
It's going to be before 2 months.
We'll post as soon as we can officially say something.
It's going to be an interesting race. So if you made it this far in that podcast, you can
definitely stay tuned for that.
Get excited, and SEOTR will be posting stuff about that if that happens.
In addition, you can also find the Shawnee video coming soon. Stay tuned for that. This should be an awesome little recap video capturing the whole day. So if you like listening to the podcast, wait till you watch the video because it'll be just as entertaining, hopefully.
Yeah, and as always, find us on YouTube. That's if you're watching us there, but also Apple iTunes, Google Play for podcast form. Also Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Ridge Runners.
Ridge Runners.
So hit us up, guys. We're having fun doing this. It's we're 2 months in, putting out weekly content. Every now and then with the trail talk, putting out whenever something arises. But looking forward to more stuff like this. We really enjoy it. And if you have any topics or people or races that you want us to cover, we'll consider it.
Yeah, let us know your suggestions, guys. We look forward to hearing from you.
Cool. Very good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Until next time, Trail Talk, Ridge Runners.